First of all, this is for Tim Huelskamp. With Paul Ryan's plan, he wants to tax 25% on income. I'm a huge independent conservative Reform Party candidate. I served a Reform Party candidate for governor. My theory is this: the fair tax, and I've heard you talk about it. I had you be asked the question on KINA. There was economists there, and they said, when is the time that we're in a critical stage of economy right now? And you said 3 economists said right now, the only thing that's going to save America right now is the fair tax. The reason being is, if you give the flat tax, or if you have the Internal Revenue Service, what's going to happen is everybody will give the power straight to the politicians who controls the money and gives the deductions until you go to a national sales tax called the fair tax, 23 cents on the dollar. Do you want to pay it on your income, or do you want to pay it on your purchases? Let the corporations buy raw materials. Let them specialize their purchasing power. Let the American people specialize the purchasing power of their dollars. This is the only way we're ever going to create
what's the question?
But also, here's the thing about it. With the 14...
What's the question?
Okay, the question is, you back the fair tax. If you do, it's the only thing that's going to bring back $13 trillion back into the economy, $12 trillion offshore accounts. It's the only thing that's going to save our economy right now. We're in major trouble. And if this guy stays in office, it's going to be $23 trillion by 2020.
We have more than 100 co-sponsors of the fair tax. I am one of those. And when we talk about, we're going to talk about changing the way America works. That is the direction I think we're going to head. We're going to a flatter, fairer, simpler tax. How far will we go? I don't know. But the point being, in the U.S. House of Representatives, we're going to have that discussion. We're pushing that way because folks in Washington don't understand what you do with the tax code, what you do with regulations, impacts job creators in America. If we want to unleash economic revival in America, it doesn't start in Washington. It doesn't start in Topeka. It starts with every one of you being freed up to get our economy going again. We've done it before. World War II. After World War II, our debt as a nation exceeded the entire size of our economy. We're not quite there yet in terms of today, but we turned that nation around. We turned the economy around and rebuilt it, and we're going to do that again.
Ed Pates, I'm a concerned citizen. I'm kind of curious where you see this UN gun control treaty going.
The question was about the UN gun control treaty, and I haven't seen much for that. And we will be watching for that. We have all eyes watching that as well. And but with Hillary Clinton in charge of gun control, that does worry me as well.
Well, I know in the past that the U.S., especially the outlawing of using napalm, the U.S. has ignored that. Do you see that happening with this new thing?
Potentially. I just haven't seen any evidence of that, but we are watching, and again, it's ever vigilance, whether it's the Second Amendment or the 10th Amendment, or take your whole pick of all those. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Additional questions?
I'd like to know what you think about repealing the 17th Amendment.
Repealing the 17th Amendment, again, that could start at the state level, or it could start in Washington. I tell you, my focus right now is a decision that will be made about 2 months from now, dealing with the debt ceiling. And I am concerned about the debt ceiling, and I have told the leaders in Washington, I said, until we have a balanced budget amendment, you're looking at the wrong place for a vote. And so, but the balanced budget amendment is my goal right now, which is something I think we can do.
I think the 17th Amendment has led to a great downfall in this country. The states are not represented in the federal government, and I really think if you look at what's the most corrupt organization in this country, it's the U.S. Senate.
One thing I do want to note as far as states' power, we have 27 states in this country that are challenging Obamacare today. That has never happened before. A majority of the states, and we wish the Supreme Court would listen and give us a decision and let us know what we all know. The Communist Clause does not include anything President Obama wants.
That's right.
Additional questions? Thank you.
All right, Bob, go ahead, Bob. You can come up. You
I'll
got
just holler it. Tim, is there any talk of a con up there, or are you the least bit concerned that they could trash our Constitution?
all right, is there any talk of a constitutional convention?
No, I understand that concern. Bills are regularly introduced to deal with that issue. I don't share that concern compared to a $14.3 trillion deficit downgrading of our credit rating that could be coming unless Washington turns around an out-of-control budget problem. And it'll all be nothing compared to if we would fall off that credit cliff, which we are heading very quickly. We did pass this path to prosperity that would move us down the line of hopefully avoiding that catastrophe.
How big is the movement with the freshmen to defund Obamacare?
How big is the movement with the freshmen and everybody else to defend Obamacare? It gives me another reason to vote against the budget deal. We had 8 different amendments in the original budget that passed the House, 8 different ways to defund, take away, stop Obamacare. Every single one of those was dropped during the negotiations. Every single one. And we thought we'd made some progress. We'll continue to push there. But again, don't let a member of Congress tell you the agencies cannot be controlled. Because every single dollar spent in Washington is approved by the U.S. Congress. Every single dollar that's spent by the EPA is approved by me or a member of the U.S. Congress. And
last one.
Thank you, Tim, for what you're doing for us. There's kind of 2 questions I'd like. Is there any way you could pass a bill to fund the military and then shut the government down? And what would the government look like if we shut it down?
Yeah. 2 questions. Funding the military and a shutdown. And that's a big question, or was at least a week ago. And first of all, generally the appropriations bills are handled in Washington 13 different times. And the Republicans usually try to pass the military funding bill first, and the president always makes sure that's last, so he can hold the troops hostage as they did during the last negotiations when they shut that down, which is shameful. But as far as the issue of a government shutdown, what does that include? Just let me tell you, it's probably not as bad as they warn you. Under a government slowdown situation, the military still goes to work defending our nation. Border control, for what it's worth, is still active. If you're on Social Security, the checks are still going out. If you're under Medicare, you still get care. If you're under Medicaid, you still get care. Everything is in operation. Almost 70% of the government is still going on, and you still get your mail every day. So what's left? About everything else is about 1/3 of the government. That would stop. During the Carter administration, we had a government shutdown every year. You remember that? The world ended 4 years in a row? Under the Reagan administration, I think there were 17 different shutdowns. It happens, it occurs. Every federal employee received back pay, furloughed pay in every one of those circumstances. The point being is there's folks in Washington, both parties, particularly I'll say more like one party, have decided that they're afraid of a shutdown for political reasons. But I tell you, unless we face our debt crisis, we will all be shut down when they don't loan us more money. That's the real shutdown that worries me. One more question.
Thank you, Tim and Joe and Clark. For the last hour, I've seen the Koch brothers out here walking around. And my question is, how much money do the Koch brothers provide people of Kansas versus George Soros?
Very good question. How many employees by George Soros? I think the answer is none. Yes, sir.
What's your confidence level for the speaker, Boehner?
What's my confidence level for the speaker? That's a question I'll be happy to answer. It's a tough one because what you hear in public sometimes not what you see behind closed doors. I was disappointed in the budget deal, as I've indicated. And but when you go in a back room with the president, Harry Reid, and Joe Biden, you're almost lucky to come out alive. and much less a good budget deal. But one thing I will note with the Speaker is when we had the original budget discussions in the House, and what happened in the final budget deal is we cut $2.5 billion out of a military project, a second engine for the next generation of fighter aircraft. And there was a good argument to have that, and I agreed that it should be cut, $2.5 billion. That engine was to be built in Speaker Boehner's district. He gave up thousands of jobs. No other speaker, Democrat or Republican, would not even allow to vote on that, much less allowed it to happen. The cut was made. I give credit for the Speaker for allowing that to happen. That's the right thing to do.
Can you tell me what the status is with Governor Brewer and her fight?
The status with Governor Brewer and the immigration law in Arizona, which is simply a restatement of federal law. The president is still suing using your tax dollars, which is interesting. Back in 1996, President Clinton signed a bill that identified traditional marriage as the law of the land. On one hand, Eric Holder and President Obama are suing Governor Brewer for their own laws. Meanwhile, they refused to enforce a duly passed law of the U.S. Congress and the previous president. Those are both outrageous examples of when you have too much power in the executive branch, and we have to roll it back.
All right.